Well, how's everybody doing today? Well, welcome to day 4 of Corona Online School. So we've just finished up the exam, and so what I've graded so far looked really, really good. So good job, everybody. So now we're actually moving on to Chapter 5 and Chapter 6, Unit 3. And so today what we want to talk about is the integers. So if you're following along in the packet, so remember when we started off the semester, we started off with natural numbers, which were just the counting numbers. And then we introduced the whole numbers, which was basically the natural numbers plus 0 in this case. So now what we want to do is we want to add in all the negatives. So now we're looking at the -3, -2, -1, goes on and on and on forever. So we're looking at all positive and negative whole numbers in this case. And so just a look, like there's instances where we use negatives all the time. So when it comes to money, when it comes to the stock market, when it comes to temperature, football, anything like related to positives and negatives and things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to represent integers kind of two different ways. So in this case, we're thinking of black as positive and reds as negative. So for example, if I wanted to represent the number 5 in terms of colored counters, then I would just do 5 black dots. But if I wanted to represent the number -3, then in that case, I would get 3 red dots. So this would be a good chance for you guys to get your colored pencils out and things like that, or if you didn't have colored pencils, come up with some kind of a shape so you know which one's positive and which one's negative. And so same thing, number line, which we've been working on without the negatives. So in this case, if I could put a 0 here, then everything to the right of the 0 is going to be considered positive numbers. Everything to the left of 0 is going to be a negative number. So if I wanted to plot -4 on the graph, I just go to -4 and I color that in. If I wanted to plot 2 on the number line, I would go to 2 and I would just kind of plot that guy in. So in this first section, besides trying to talk about how we're going to list the different integers, one things that we want to talk about are the opposite of something or the negative of something. So the opposite, the way you want to think about that would be like on the number line. So if I'm looking for the opposite of 2, then I'm looking for something that's the same distance away on the number line, but on the opposite side. So in this case, the opposite of 2 would be -2 because it's exactly the same distance away, but on the left-hand side of the 0. Same thing, the opposite of -2 would take me to +2 in this case. And so the negative of 4 is kind of doing the same idea. So the negative of 4 would actually go down to -4. And the negative of -4, so imagine multiplying a negative times a negative would give us a positive. So this is going to give us +4. So again, they're kind of on the opposite. And since 0 is neither positive or negative, the negative of 0 is just 0 in that case. All right. Does anybody have any questions or anything on page 1? So if so, post me a message and let me know. Otherwise, let's look at absolute value. So in this case, this may be something that you remember, maybe something that you don't remember, but the main thing is when you're talking about the absolute value is you're trying to measure a distance. So with that in mind, so if I think of a number line, for example, and I ask you what's the distance from 0 to 3, you're probably going to tell me it's 3, which is true. But if I ask what's the distance from -3 to 0, technically it's also 3. So because the idea is when we measure distance, we're always trying to describe it in terms of a positive value. And that's what our absolute value does in this case. So it's always going to give us kind of the positive value. So how far is -2 away from 0 is still just 2 units in that case, because again we want to think of it as a positive. How far is positive 2 away from 0? So again, same thing. It's just going to be 2 units away. How far is 0 away from 0? Well, 0 is on 0, so there's no distance. It's just plain old 0. And not that we can easily draw it, but how far away is a negative 163 from 0? It's going to be 163 units. All right. Is that okay? Good. All right. So now the other nice thing that you can have about number lines is it gives an ordering to things. So if something is further to the right, that means it's a bigger number. If something's further to the left, it's a smaller number. And so with that, we get these nice inequalities. So less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or exactly equal to. So in this case, we want to go through and try to determine if something's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or exactly equal to. And again, it doesn't hurt if you're not sure, like to actually draw like a number line when you can. So like in this case, if I look at 3 and 5, so there's my 3, there's my 5. Since my 3 is to the left of 5, that means that 3 is less than 5 in this case. So usually for the positive numbers, we don't have a whole lot of trouble. Where we sometimes get into trouble is when we start relating positives and negatives, or worse, even negatives to negatives. So example, if we look at 0 to negative 2, so in this case we've got negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1. So our negative 2's there, our 0's there, and since our 0 is to the right of negative 2, then that means that in this case 0 is greater than negative 2. Negative 10, negative 12. So again, this one can be a tricky one sometimes. So there's my negative 12, there's my negative 10. And so again, since negative 10 is to the right of negative 12, that means we're going to get that negative 10 is greater than negative 12. And then finally, negative 7 and negative 5. So negative 7 is to the left of negative 5, so that tells us that negative 7 is less than negative 5 in that case. So again, feel free, sketch out the number line if you need to help you with it. But otherwise, play around with some of those guys and see how you do. All right, so again, if you have any questions on 5.1, just let me know. I'm going to stop this video here just to keep these videos short. Then I'll start another video with 5.2. So if you have questions, post them up to the site and let me know. Otherwise, good.